Well, over half of all councillors in England and Wales were up for election last week. And of course, as you know, there was a big change between particularly the Liberal Democrats and Labour. Liberal Democrats losing an awful lot of seats, Labour gaining around 800 seats across the country, and the Conservatives, in perhaps the surprising element of the results on Thursday evening, the Conservatives actually gaining seats. But the bigger story really in terms of power, decisions about spending and local services, is about who controls councils. And what happened on Thursday evening into Friday morning with these counts all across the country is that many, many councils changed political control. Labour gained lots of councils, particularly the big cities in the north. Some of that was expected, but I think the scale of their win in the north took some by surprise at the Liberal Democrats' expense. The Conservatives took lots of councils in the south from no overall control, giving them majority control and therefore able to make perhaps some bigger, tougher decisions in those councils where they've got an outright majority. So there'll be lots of changes in town halls across the country in the weeks and years ahead. I think lots of councils will be looking at their budgets again for next year, because going into the elections, councillors would have been saying that they were going to seek to change certain policies, to defend certain services. I know, for example, in Newcastle, the incoming Labour administration there has been talking about overturning some of the Liberal Democrats' decisions. So there will be another look at those budgets. But of course, it's going to be quite difficult for councils because they're in a period where council budgets are reducing very, very dramatically. So their scope to make change is quite limited. But undoubtedly, they'll be looking to do that. And so there'll be officers in local government around the country, particularly heads of finance and chief executives, trying to find some room in budgets to accommodate the promises that politicians have made on the doorstep in recent weeks. Well, I know that libraries has been one of the issues that lots of councils have been talking about, and some councils will now be saying, OK, we're going to keep the libraries open. That's been the pledge of the incoming administration. Adult social services has been very much in the political spotlight, and things like free school meals for children and so on, some of those more election-winning promises that politicians make, those things are going to be looked at. Leisure services and their future is also something that I know councils are going to be reviewing. But there's also a bigger context. You'll see some councils actually reviewing their whole approach to the future of local public services. So, for example, the commissioning and outsourcing of services is something that some of the incoming politicians taking over control of councils have expressed concerns about. So they're going to be reviewing strategically the future of the councils too. There's been a lot of fallout from these elections, particularly amongst Liberal Democrats, many of whom are saying that their party is paying the price for coalition policies. It's interesting, of course, that the Conservatives have done well at these elections. And so those two parties will be saying, why are we faring so differently? For the Conservatives, of course, that's a positive thing, although they will be concerned about their coalition partners, about the impact on policy making. But the Liberal Democrats in particular will be doing lots of soul searching in the next weeks and months. I was talking to a Liberal Democrat councillor this morning who was saying to me that he thought his party should come out of the coalition formally, should seek to re-establish its identity. And I've heard that from places like Oldham, from Newcastle, where the council leaders have been saying, look, we need to rethink the approach of our party to coalition. I think from the national point of view in terms of policies, particularly healthcare, but also perhaps education, are going to be battlegrounds in the coming weeks and months as the two parties realign their relationship in government. The interesting thing about the AV referendum in recent weeks is the argument that was made against coalition government, implying that coalition is somehow a weak form of government. What we've actually seen in the last year from the coalition we've had here in Britain for the first time in a long time is a government making some quite bold moves in lots of areas of public policy, on areas like welfare reform, criminal justice, taking on some quite difficult issues, things that perhaps the previous government had ducked in some ways because they knew they were unpopular. Now, whether the government, the coalition government, feels able to carry on down that bold reforming path, given that some of those reforms, particularly, for example, GP commissioning in healthcare, is very, very controversial, remains to be seen, I think, in the next weeks and months. So some Conservatives are saying, look, let's get back to business as usual. I think some Liberal Democrats are saying, well, hang on, hasn't this boldness got us into trouble? Do we not need to review the relationships that we have and some of the policies that we have?